Hello everyone. I promised that I would make a video on how to make a test in TestGen and then upload it into a quiz in D2L. So I'm going to do my best to do that. And I'm going to use Connect Math as an example, but you can also make TestGen tests within my math lab. I believe you can make them actually within my math lab rather than having to download it onto your computer. Again, I'm not an expert at any of this. I just figured out last week that we could do this, and so I thought I would at least give you guys enough that you could get started on it. And also, if you're using Alex, you could come to Connect Math, because you should have access to Connect Math also, and you could make a class, just like a dummy class, with the same book that you use in Alex, or at least a book with the same content that you use in Alex, and you could do the same thing. You could download the TestGen information and make a test with that. So, for that matter, you could do that for classes that don't use McGraw-Hill at all or Pearson at all. So keep that in mind if you use WebEx or Hawks or anything else. As long as you can find a Connect Math book that has the same content, then you can use their TestGen. So I'm in a class in Connect Math, and if you go to Resources, and then you go to Reference, somewhere past all the other things, most of the other things, you will find Test Bank. Now, if you've used TestGen before, you don't need to do this, but if you've never used TestGen before, you'll have to download the app onto your computer. I've never tried to download it onto my work laptop. I don't know if it would have any problems. I guess if it does have problems, all I can say is just to get hold of the help desk and see if they can help you. Hopefully it'll download onto the school computer. Okay, so what you're going to do is, these are test banks. These are full of questions that are for this course's book. And so if you go to this, and I think that this has only the Mac, this has only the Windows, and then this has it all. I'm not sure about that. I've always used the one at the top that says the name of the book, Test Bank. So if we click on that, it's going to start downloading the questions from that test bank. So then you can then put them into your TestGen app and make a test from them. It does take a little bit of time to do this. And what it's going to do is it's going to download a zip file. Okay, so it's finally downloaded. And I'm going to go here and say Show in Folder so that I can extract the zip file. If you've never done a zip file before, it's basically, it's like all scrunched up and you have to expand it. No, that's not a very technical explanation of it. So I'm going to open this file and show you what it looks like. So the file, this is the file, and I just have to click Extract All. And I always just put it wherever the original zip file was at. And now I usually just open it just to double check I know where it's at. And then I'll minimize this. And I'm done now really with Connect Math, so I can shut down Connect Math at this point if I want to. And then, like I said, at some point you would have wanted to have the TestGen app downloaded. And so you now need to open up that TestGen app. Get that up here on my screen. And it seems to be sometimes it puts the downloaded zip file right into your app, and other times I have to put it in here. So again, I don't use TestGen a lot, but Sometimes it'll put it in here and sometimes it won't. I'm kind of glad that it didn't because I can show you how to put it in here. So right now I have elementary statistics as my only test bank, and the class that I was copying was a college algebra class. So I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to add a test bank to the library. So I'm going to add that college algebra test bank. And at that point it'll let me find the file. Like this one came up right here because I had just been there, but if it wasn't, you'd have to find your file. This PC, and then downloads. You might have to search for it, but it's right here. And this is the file that I want to put in here. It has this little symbol here. It's a test bank file. So you click open, and then it'll put that into your test bank library. So now I have all the questions to make a test for elementary statistics or for college algebra. Those are the two books test banks that I have in my TestGen right now. So now what we're going to do is we're going to try to make a test that we can put into D2L. TestGen will make a paper test for future reference if you'd like to do that. And there's even what they call a TestGen wizard to help you make a paper test quicker and easier if you want to let the program kind of pick your questions. But we can't do either of those. We need to do a web test so that we can put it into D2L. So we're going to click web test. And this is where it took me a while to get around to figure out how to do this, because Desire to Learn, D2L, does not work as the web platform. And I think it's because D2L got purchased or bought out by Blackboard. So we actually have to click Blackboard as our web platform. And then this is your exam. It doesn't have any questions in it right now. And you're going to go over and open up your college algebra, and it'll have all the different chapters. And when you open up a chapter, then it will give the different sections, and then you click on which section. So say I want to do questions on functions and relations, and then, you know, again, it just keeps drilling down until we get to questions that we want to put on the exam. So here are the questions. So I went to chapter 2, section 2.3, concept 2, which was apply function notation, and I have all these questions. Some of the questions won't have this little symbol over here. This little symbol actually means, it's supposed to mean that you can kind of tell the parameters or the different variations of the question that you want. I've had a little difficulty with making that work, so we'll see how it goes right now. So say I wanted to use this question right here, number 4. All I'm going to do is click on number 4. I'm going to go down here to add selected items, and it puts that over here as number 1 on my test. What's really nice is it will just put them in whatever order you add them. If you want to rearrange them, you just grab them. I'll wait till I have more than one here, but you can just grab them and move them. And you can also, if it was a paper test, you could put like a title and everything on the top of it if you wanted to. But since this is a web test, we don't need that. So we have this question on here. Let's go back and, oh, and let me show you. So like if I click on this question, highlight it, and I right click on this little down arrow, I can either lock the number values. If it's pointing up, my understanding is that it'll just keep this exact question. But if you have it in the down position, I know that's really hard to see, but the little arrow here is pointing down, then that means it'll give a variety of questions to the students. Again, I don't know how well that works because I haven't had a chance to check it out, but it's supposed to give a little bit different question to different students. So let's pick some different types. I'm going to pause a minute while I find something different. Okay, so I wanted to give, again, a couple different types of questions so I could do a couple different things. So I'm going to add this question. You can also like drag and drop it over here, and that's what I was talking about where you could move it, is you can just, if you grab a question, if you want to flip the question around, you just grab it and move it. So I've just switched 1 to 2 and then 2 back to 1. So you can do that, and the other thing you can do is if you highlight this question, it's got to be all highlighted, and you right click on that down arrow, it'll let you change the question type. Sometimes changing it to a certain question type doesn't work for the problem, so you'll just have to see what it does to it. But say I wanted this to be a short answer instead of a multiple choice, I would click short answer, I would say okay, and then it has it as a short answer question instead of a multiple choice. So I'm going to leave this as a multiple choice. If you want to, actually I'll just leave that, see what it does when we go into D2L. Okay, and then I also wanted to do a graphing question so that we could see what that looks like in D2L. So I'm going to go to 2.4 graph linear equations, and you'll see it's multiple choice with different errors that they might make, you know, kind of the common errors, and they have to pick out which one is correct. And so that's what that looks like. So I can add that over here, and then I also wanted to show you that I could add a question twice. So if I wanted to have another one of these questions, I could click on this and add it again, and because that's one that has variations on it, you'll notice that this is 3x minus 5y equals negative 15, and this is negative 5x minus 2y equals 10. So it's two questions of the same type, but they're not the exact same question, as long as it has one of these little symbols beside it. Some of the questions don't. If it doesn't have that little symbol, it doesn't have a variety. It's just a static question. So now obviously that's a pretty short test, but we're going to call it a day and say it's just a 4-question test. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on the file, and I'm going to tell it that I want to export this. And again, I need to pick Blackboard. And then I can put in here what I want. This is a practice exam. And then I can do a description if I want, but that's optional. So I'm going to say OK. Let's see what it says. I hadn't had this happen before. Okay, so it does not like that we made number 2 a short answer, so I guess we have to leave it as a multiple choice. So I'm going to change this back to a multiple choice question. And that's the nice thing, is if there's a problem, you can always just go fix it. All right, so we're going to export to Blackboard, and again I'm going to name it practice test, and it's going to put it on my computer. So I'm going to put it in the same folder that, so I'm going to save it somewhere where I know where it's at. So I'm going to save it in my TestGen folder, and I'm going to call it TestGen practice, and I'm going to save it, and it exports this exam onto my computer in that format that we need. So now at this point we're done with this, and we're ready to go to D2L and put the questions into D2L. Okay, so let me reiterate that before you do this step, you want to have that test in TestGen as close to what you want as possible, because you don't want to have to keep repeating this step. You want to just get all the questions over at once. It'll be a lot easier. Although you can add questions later if you need to. So I'm in my class. I'm going to just put it in the statistics class from the summer so that it's not messing up some other class. I'm going to go up here to the little settings. When you click it or hover over it, it says admin tools. And you click it, and one of the choices is import, export, copy components. And once we do that, we're going to choose to import components. And then we're going to just click Start, because we don't want it from a LOR. We want it from a course package. So we're going to click Start, and it will allow us now to find the file. So we're going to go look for that file of that test that we had. I'm hoping it's in my quick access here. It is. So I called it, remember, TestGen practice. I'm going to grab that. I'm going to open it, and it's already listed here, and I'm going to import all those components, and it's uploading, converting, and importing. And I'm going to leave it run so you have kind of an idea of how long it takes to do this. Remember, this is only 4 questions, so it does take a little bit of time for it to run its course. So now it's been converted and it's importing it, and it's done. I think we click View Content. Okay, so at this point then, what we have is we have those questions in our question pool. And so now I'm going to make an exam, or as D2L calls it, a quiz. I'm going to call it TestGen Practice. And I'm going to go to Add, Edit Questions. Then you're going to click Import, and you're going to import from you're going to browse the question library, because those questions we just put in from TestGen went into the question library. Now, my question library has some questions that I put in there into this course prior, because this is like all the questions that you've put into your course, not just into one quiz. And so if you've never done that before, then this, what you just put in will be the only thing probably. So I'm going to browse this, and then I just click on the questions that I want to add. So I want to add everything from that. And then now, if you go back to your settings for your test, you'll see that those questions were added. And you can still go and add, edit questions. You could import from more questions from the question library if you wanted to. So I could go back to this question library and do some other questions that I have. I can also do anything that I can normally do in D2L with looking at the questions or changing the questions. So I'm going to go to Add, Edit Questions. These are the 4 questions I have in there now. And so I can go here and I can click on this question and I can see what it looks like. So this is what the student's going to see. This is what it's going to look like to them. I can change the points if I want to. It will select randomized answers for each student, but if you don't want to do that, I think most of us do, but if you don't want to do that, you can unclick it. But if you want to make this a 3-point question or a 2-point question, you can do that. Don't forget to click Save if you do change some. And I'm going to go look at those ones that had the graphs on them so you can see what those look like. I think they're actually kind of impressive. So this is what it would look like to the student. It would say graph the equation, identify the x, y intercepts. It would give the equations, and then they would choose which of these they wanted to do. And if you want to, you can come in here and in options, you can tell it to add enumeration, which means put the letters in there. And so when you click on that question now, instead of it just being open, 4 answers, it actually says A, B, C, D. That's completely up to you. It looks like it chose as a default not to do that, but you can go in there and do that. So anyway, now you have all your other setups for a D2L quiz just like you normally would, but you can use the questions from the TestGen instead of having to hand type in all your questions. One last thing that I did want to show is that if you go back here to your course activities and you go to your quizzes, that's where you would choose to do lockdown browser. So you go to lockdown browser, and if you want to choose to lock down that quiz when they take it, and you would choose TestGen Practice. And then we would go over here and we would tell it that we want to require Respondus Lockdown Browser for this exam. And we save and close that. And actually, what I wanted to set up on this was to require the monitor, so I opened it back up and I want to click here and tell it to require Respondus Monitor for this exam, and then you have some different settings you can choose here. But that's it. If you go back and look at this quiz now, it says it requires Respondus Lockdown Browser and webcam. So we've got our test with all our questions from our TestGen file. We've got it in Lockdown Browser and it's ready to go. And we didn't have to type in a single question. So I will stop now, and I hope this has helped some people, and feel free to let me know if you have any questions, and I'll try to help if I can. Have a great semester.